Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. The next hour is all about the entrepreneur, why they start businesses, how they make their businesses grow, how they overcome failures and achieve success. Your hosts are Bob Gibbons, founder of Riata Commercial Realty, a commercial real estate advisory and tenant advocacy firm, and Stephen Neuner, founder and CEO of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. Bob and Stephen will ask probing questions to find impactful solutions that will help take your business to the next level. And now, here's Bob Gibbons and Stephen Neuner.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. This is your host, Bob Gibbons.
And I'm Stephen Neuner.
So we're excited about being on a new radio station today. This is our very first show at 1190 AM Talk Radio, which is an iHeart radio station. So, Stephen, you excited about this?
I am.
What are we going to do differently?
Well, how about we introduce the audience to what we're doing? You sound like this might be your first show ever, Bob.
It's kind of looking that way.
Yeah, it's only been 2 years in the making, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about wisdom of others first. We always start the shows with wisdom of others, so let's do that again this time. So you have a quote for us today?
Yes, I do. Every man dies, not every man really lives. You who said that?
No.
William Wallace.
Who was that?
Braveheart, man. Come on.
Oh, the actor or the real guy? I never saw that show, actually.
Figures.
So every man dies, but not every man lives. So I assume he's saying that, we're all going to die one way or the other, but who's going to truly live the way they live their lives?
Yeah.
So what is that sort of what you got out of it, or what?
Yeah. I mean, it was actually in an amazing book that I'm reading right now. Maybe we'll talk about later, but it was written by, the book is written by someone who feels that terminal cancer was a gift, and they wrote a book. Wow. And so this was one of their quotes in there, and I was moved by the whole book. So we'll talk more about it later. But this quote I thought was pretty solid.
Yeah, no, very cool. I like that.
Let's live a little.
Well, we learned a lot from the wisdom of others. That's why we do it every show. So let's talk about the show. So it's called The Next Level. Yes. Conversations that propel business. Mm-hmm. So it's all about business, but more specifically, it's celebrating and honoring business. So what's our mission statement?
Our show exists to honor the entrepreneurial community by acting as a catalyst for personal and professional growth in it.
So that means we're really focused on the entrepreneurs. So that means this show is really all about how do we start conversations, how do we start businesses, how do we honor and celebrate the people that create companies, not just for the purpose of making money, so to speak, but for lots of other reasons, for community reasons, solving problems, creating jobs. I mean, there's so many things that entrepreneurs do and people that start businesses do that's really what we're here to celebrate.
It is. And one of the things I think that's unique to our show is that so many of the shows out there, the Shark Tanks, if you will, and a lot of the others, they make it look like it's instant. And so a lot of what we do is talk about, the not so pretty stuff, the not so sexy glam stuff that really, really goes on in the day-to-day operations as people are trying to build and scale businesses, which probably takes us to our vision.
Yep. So,
you have our
go
vision?
ahead.
Yeah. Our vision is, our goal is to facilitate fun and meaningful conversations where real learning and experience sharing positively impacts both the listener and the sharer, ultimately equipping, encouraging, and empowering each other to take our businesses, our families, our communities to the next level.
That's a lot to say.
It's beautiful, though. I'm moved.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. We want authentic conversations. So it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're not really just here to say, hey, aren't we all so great because we created these businesses, we created these jobs, whatever. But it's really about, what does it really take? The blood, sweat, and the tears, and the purposes behind it for the positive impact. Because, most businesses are going to fail, right? Depending on whose numbers you look at, anywhere from 50 to 80% of companies are going to fail in the first 5 years. So the folks that we have on this show typically are going to be people that have had their companies longer than that and have built them up to some level of success to varying degrees. I mean, we've had people with as few as a few employees all the way up to hundreds of employees, 1,000 employees. But they all are creating something and positively impacting many lives along the way.
And paying taxes.
Paying taxes. That's the definition.
Some maybe more than others, but I'm
definition of success is I'm a tax-paying citizen and I'm not in jail.
Well, and another thing that I think is really important about the show for the audience to know, for you guys to know, is there's nothing to sell. Bob and I have nothing to sell. We are both business people. We have companies, but we're not here to, spend the next hour talking about Obamacare or Affordable Care Act or insurance or how many square feet or anything like that.
You're not going to try and get me in your downline?
I might, Bob. I really have this amazing vitamin I've been taking that's preventing my kids from going to college, but it's you should look into it.
Yeah, and actually that is one of the unique things. When we first started trying to create this show, all the radio stations we talked to, one of their first questions was, well, what are you selling? And whenever I would say, well, we're not financial advisors that are trying to get people to invest with us. We're not selling some new product. We're not, whatever. They just didn't get it. But, it's sort of a passion project.
It is.
And sort of a hobby, if you will, because we love talking about business. But at the same time, we're here to learn, right?
Yes.
So the fact that we both own companies, we're always trying to find ways to improve and get new ideas.
Yeah, and I mean that's what it's about. It's it's verbose, but equipping, encouraging, and empowering each other. Right? We can. I was not the best student in school, but what I found it was because a lot of times my teachers were academics, and so what I found once I really got in the business world is I can learn really fast and I learn well. And listen well to people that are actually doing things and are doing the things that they're teaching me. Yeah. And for whatever reason, maybe it's my own boneheadedness. I wish I could learn the other way. Not that that's not valuable, but I learned so much better in this format. So I think that the real sharing, we can all learn from each other. 80%, you and I are totally different industries. 80% of all of our problems are the same.
Yeah.
And I found that no matter what the business is.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I was trying to find a school to go to for my master's degree, I looked at a few schools, and what I did not want—
Translation, Bob's one of those smart guys.
Well, to be determined. Being smart in books and being smart in applying what you learn are way, way different things, right? So when I was looking at the schools, one of the criteria I used in determining which one to go to was who were the professors? And were these professors people that had practical business experience where they applied what they learned and knew? Or were they what I called academic weenies, people that went from, kindergarten through their PhD and never had a real job, but now they only have the option to turn around and teach it to someone else? I didn't want that. So I chose a school based on that criteria, and I was very happy with my choice.
Yeah. I mean, I literally have a degree in entrepreneurship, and I can't tell you the first thing that I learned that really applied to my business. And I love that the school I went to is a great experience, and I learned some basic foundations. But quite honestly, I tell people all the time, being in a fraternity in college and running a fraternity taught me far more about what running a real business is like than even just the book academic stuff I learned. Because again, it was hands-on, practical knowledge. We had a budget, we had to recruit, we had to sell. We had to sell ourselves some date parties and try to get the girls to invite us to something.
Probably the hardest sell of all was get the girls to come, right?
Yeah. Well, for some of us, harder than others. And then it was a volunteer. So trying to lead volunteers probably was a great experience for even trying to lead a team in today's world,
So in that entrepreneur degree that you got,
mm-hmm.
How many people that went through that degree with you actually turned into entrepreneurs as opposed to employees of someone else?
I'm sure there's more, but I mean, I knew a lot of the people that came through that with me, and I know of 3. Now a lot of them have gone on to really, really great careers, and they're operating business units, and they're influential leaders here around town. But I know a few of them only a few that actually went out and started their own.
3
company.
out of how many?
I probably know. probably knew and ran with 100 people. There's probably a couple hundred people in the program.
So 3% of the people that went to school to be entrepreneurs actually became entrepreneurs, as far as you know.
Yeah. I'm sure there's
probably more, and there may be some that will still become.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you became an entrepreneur, young.
Mm-hmm.
You were still in your 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was really in my 40s
Mm-hmm.
whenever it happened. So there's still time.
Yep. And a lot of them were, like I said, they become entrepreneurs and stuff like that. So there's it depends. Everyone's got a different definition of entrepreneurs, and ours is actually people that start companies and build them. But a lot of times there are very entrepreneurial people,
Right.
And for those of you out there, you can get a lot of value from the show too.
Yeah, because like I said, we're not selling anything. We're here to learn. So, and we've had some pretty amazing success stories. So in the past, we've been on another station. So we've had the show for 2.5 years, but we're taking this particular episode to sort of reintroduce the show since we have a new audience on a new station. So that's the purpose of this. So we don't have a guest. So normally what we have is a guest, somebody who is a business person who
the audience
started
will be
something.
Thankful after today's show.
Absolutely. Please don't make me listen to only these guys again. But so that's the purpose of this particular show, is to talk about that. And we are going to talk about our individual companies a bit later, just so you get to know. But we've had some very interesting success stories along the way, but not in the way a lot of people would think. So the success stories is not in how much money we've made out of having the show, but it's the impact that the guests have had.
Yeah.
And so give me a story about something that was a success that you can remember.
I mean, there's a number, right? So a lot of times people, how many listeners, how many this, how many that, how many the other. And I because it's a passion project, I measure it in the impact. And there's impact. I've heard people say, oh, well, we've gotten business or that or the other. But one of my favorites, we've had one guest on 2 times, and is become a very good friend of mine. But it's someone that came on the show, and what he shared was that after listening to the show and listening to his interview, he was really lit up and passionate about pretty much, and his team recognized it too, pretty much all the way through the interview, until you really, really drilled him and called him out on like what he actually does for as a company, and his energy went flat. And so after listening that back, talking with his team, what he realized is that he was disconnected from there wasn't enough purpose in his business.
All right, so let's finish that story on the other side of the break. This is the Next Level, Conversations that Propel Business on 1190 AM.
Stick around.
Hi, this is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty. If your office lease is going to be expiring in the next year or two, the one thing I would tell you definitely do not want to do is exercise a renewal option. Now, that may sound a little nuts. When you negotiate for that renewal option, why wouldn't you actually want to use it? Well, the reason is because while you want to have one as a reservation for your space so the landlord can't lease the space out from under you, that option may not actually work the way you want it to now. It may have made sense 5 years ago, but it doesn't today. The only thing that changes when you exercise a renewal option are the expiration date and the rent. But you may want to do other things like have another option to renew, have an option to terminate or expand. You may want to be able to expand now or have a new base year for your operating expenses. There's all kinds of things that need to be considered. So we recommend that you renegotiate, not renew. For more information, contact me, Bob Gibbons, at texastenantrep.com. That's texastenantrep.com. Welcome back to the Next Level, Conversations that Propel Business. So we're here talking about the show, and this is our first episode on this station, 1190 AM Talk Radio. We're excited to be here. We've been on another station for the last 2.5 years, so we're just talking about what this show is about and why you're going to want to listen every week, Mondays at 3 o'clock. So, Stephen, you were telling us a story about the impact that we've seen of the show on the other station with a particular guy who had come on the show. We kind of were drilling down on what his company was all about, and I was the one doing that, apparently.
Bob, you're such a troublemaker.
And
that's why he's my friend and not yours now.
He kind of got convicted that it wasn't as clear as he would like it to have been.
Yeah, and his energy was flat, and what he realized is that his business, in a lot of ways, had become like it was just business, and he didn't like that it didn't really connect, and he didn't have passion talking about it because his passion wasn't in it. And so he spent, to his credit, we did nothing, but we were just a little, him being on the show was like an illuminator for him, where he said, "Oh, wow." And so he did some work, and was involved in a couple of different programs. And what he got really clear on is he had no purpose in his business that really connected and resonated with him personally. And so he's gone through a massive transformation. He's changed the way that they operate and the way they go to market and the value they deliver to their clients. And, he's gone so far now he's even written a book. And so, I'm just super, super proud of the guy. And it's really, really, you can just see him. He's on fire right now.
Yeah, he actually came back for the second time on the show. He's the only guy we've had as a guest a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about that journey and his passion project and the purpose and the legacy that he left. And you can find that episode if you want to go back and listen to it, listeners, at nextlevelshow.com. We have an archive of every show we've ever done there. There's 130 or 135 shows there.
And his name's Kevin Bonfield with Concentra.
Yeah, so that would be a great place. Another one of the success stories that I really like was I have a guy who came on the show, and he told me that he had been trying to recruit a very important key employee to fill a position in the business, and he couldn't quite get the person to say, yes, I'll come work there.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden one day the guy calls him up and says, hey, I'm in. Let's do this thing. I'm ready to come work there. And so he's like, fantastic. He was so excited that he just, got the guy scheduled to come over. And a few weeks after he got there, he started thinking, wait a minute, what was it about him or what happened that suddenly put him over the top to say, yeah, I'll come work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went to the guy and said, hey, what happened? And the guy said, you know what? I knew everything about the company I needed to know. I knew what my position was going to be. I knew what the industry was and who our target client was and everything else, but I didn't really know what it was going to be like to work for you.
Mm.
And this guy's name was Mark. He's the CEO. And so Mark was like a little taken aback by that. But the guy said, it's just that I didn't really know what it was going to be like to work for you because I didn't know you that well. But then I heard you as a guest on a radio show, and you talked about the culture of the company and how important the employees were and everything you were doing for the employee. And it told me that we were very much aligned in our values and what was important. And so I was all in at that point.
That's incredible. It's a great story.
Yeah, the fact that the guy found he was obviously searching the guy's name and found him on our show. So that was kind of a fun story as well.
Yep. And I think there's one more you got to share, and that's probably my favorite.
One other one that really blew me away is about 6 months after a guy had been on the show, I invited him to go to an event, and he showed up to the event, and he was wearing a shirt, and on his shirt, sometimes it was like a polo shirt, and it had stitched on one side the name of a company, but it wasn't his company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just kind of messing with him, and I said, hey, James, what's with your shirt? Why isn't it, why didn't it have your name on it, your company name on it? He goes, oh, did I not tell you? I was like, tell me what?
This is awesome.
I haven't seen you. How would I know? He said, yeah, after I was on your show, a company from Canada had been wanting to get into the U.S. market, and they came across your radio show with me as the guest. And as a result of that show, they, again, saw there was great alignment in what we did and what they wanted to do, and the values were very consistent. And so they called me and said, we want to buy your company. And, took a while, but we agreed. And so I now have sold my company to them, and I work for them running the U.S. office.
That's incredible.
I was blown away. And, of course, I wanted to know where my commission was. He didn't find the same humor in that I did.
Well, and that's where I was going to correct you earlier. Anyone who wants to give me money, I'm fine. But we have nothing to sell. But you're just giving away money, go for it.
Exactly.
While you're paying taxes. So I think something that's also worthwhile. We've talked a little bit about kind of the format of the show, but why don't you share the story a little bit of how you and I came together and how this show was even birthed to begin with?
Well, I had been on a few radio shows as the guest, and I really enjoyed.
I've been on a few radio shows as the person of interest.
Yeah, well, I didn't say it was an interesting show, but I was on
Square Feet with Bob Gibbons.
I was on 3 different shows, and or 2 shows, but one twice. And I really enjoyed the experience. It was a lot of fun. And so I wanted to start a show for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to start the show that we're actually doing, all about business and how people start them and run them and grow them and how they overcome failures and successes, et cetera. And I couldn't find that show on the radio anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Found a lot of shows about how to get people to invest, how to get them to buy whatever, get a mortgage, use them as the real estate broker, whatever. But I couldn't really find one about business. So fast forward a little bit, I met Stephen. We met in a business networking group, probably 12 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And maybe 13.
I was a whippersnapper back then.
You were a pup. But anyway, so we got to be friends. And throughout that time, I would kind of mention the radio idea to him. And we actually even hosted a Bible study for a while for business owners. And we kept this conversation going. But it was really hard to find a radio station that would let us be on the air during the week for a once-a-week show. But we finally found one. And whenever I was talking to that radio station, I really had to think, hey, do I want to do this alone or do I want to do it with Stephen?
Yeah.
And
you had to think long and hard about that.
Well, not that long and hard. But I'm really glad that we decided to do this together because I feel like 2 of us doing it together makes for a better show, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, we can call on our respective networks of people we know to find guests.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of good things about doing it together. And so I'm thrilled we did that. We actually had looked at this particular station, 1190, at one time, but at that time it was going to have to be a 5-day-a-week show, and we just couldn't do that and run our businesses, obviously, because this is a side hustle, so to speak. Not that there's any hustle going on, but it's
plenty of hustle for me.
A lot of hustle, but not hustle in terms of selling stuff. So anyway, so that's how we kind of got this thing going. And so for 2.5 years when we were on the other station, it was a half an hour show. And so now here on this station, it's going to be an hour show. We have a lot more time to fill.
Yeah.
But our listeners were asking us for more content. A half an hour show was just not enough time to get into the real details that they wanted to hear from the guests. So that's one of the reasons we moved stations, one of the reasons we went to an hour show.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit? I think it might be worthwhile. Just, I have kind of a list of just the types of questions, like what the audience can expect from our show on a weekly basis. It's stuff like, what led someone to become an entrepreneur?
What was their first business?
Yeah, what was their first business? If something destroyed their business, and these are successful entrepreneurs, typically multi-million-dollar revenue companies with many employees. If something destroyed their business and they had to rebuild it from scratch, what would they redo differently? Just thought-provoking questions. And then anywhere where these conversations go, what's really great and what I really appreciate the extra time is, like, now we can drill down, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we had this pivotal change in our sales process, and it just cost us to 5X in 3 years, and it was amazing. Well, before, when we had 30 minutes and there was commercials and everything else in between, it was like, oh, hey, that's great. And so we would always have, the show after show where we took the guest out to lunch to thank them, and we'd get, like, that's where a lot of the learning would occur for me. And so I'm really grateful to be here from a standpoint of, like, now the audience will really get to experience, because we'll get to drill down and again, share that wisdom of, hey, we figured something out. We're in totally different businesses. How can I take that and learn and apply for that to my company?
Yeah, and some of the other things that we discuss with those guests are, do you have a greater purpose beyond just making money for your business?
Yeah,
and
some
that
do.
Yeah, some do, and in fact, a lot of them do actually,
Yeah.
and it's always interesting to hear what that is, and some other things, what are their individual skills or habits or drive that really makes them the best of who they are, and also sometimes what are they not good at?
Yeah.
So what have they had to find in other people to help the business grow?
Yeah, one of my personal favorites, because I can resonate with it a lot, is what's your biggest breakdown, breakthrough, right?
And what does that really mean?
Yeah, well, what it means is, so often in my business career, sometimes things can be seen as a failure in the moment, and they can really, really sting. But a lot of times that's where the greatest learning occurs. And that's where the greatest growth comes, and it builds like momentum. And from personal experience, we made a couple of years ago, we got into the software thing, and we started really implementing the software, and made a significant investment in software for our clients. And we, as an example, we started eating our own cooking before we served it to our clients.
Oh.
And the whole team was excited. We had rallied around it. It was our theme for the year. We had invested over $100,000 into this project.
Oh my.
And the cooking tasted awful. And so we killed it before we could even take it. But we just told our clients, hey, we can't bring this to you. It's too awful. And so it was super painful. But through that, we learned a whole bunch of things. And now we're on a whole nother trajectory.
All right. Back in a minute on 1190 AM.
Hi, my name is Fern, and I've been an empowered team member at Alkali for over 5 years. I first learned about Alkali through an online job board and was intrigued to learn that Alkali was a Dave Ramsey endorsed local provider. But what captivated me was Alkali's mission statement, which is closely aligned with my own beliefs. So what's kept me at Alkali for over 5 years? First, Alkali's 5 core values match my own. Second, I've been empowered to use my unique abilities to impact our community, our clients, and Alkali. If you'd like to learn more about becoming an empowered Alkali team member, visit our website, alkaliservices.com. That's ALKALI services.com.
We're back with the next level on 1190 AM. Here with my illustrious guest and co-host here, Bob Gibbons.
Yes, I don't think that's
our
quite
inaugural show on 1190 AM. Thanks for being with us. So we were just talking about some of the things, types of questions we ask and types of experiences and where we can learn. And I was sharing the software debacle, a very painful experience, and really what is now an elevating factor within our business. And so while we're talking about business, what we talked about on the break is, hey, maybe we should introduce what we do. Again, we're not here to sell, but we are not, if you haven't picked up by now, we are absolutely not professional radio show hosts.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, well, Bob's been on 3 shows as a preferred, very interesting guest. But for me, when we first started doing the show, it took me 8 shows before I could even listen to myself. So I don't know that I've gotten much better, but I've at least gotten the confidence to listen to myself. And so not professional radio guys, we are business guys, and which I think gives us the credibility not to host a show, but the credibility to ask questions of other successful entrepreneurs. So, Bob, let's start off talking about you. So why don't we start off with the question, how, you said in your 40s, how did you come to starting Riata?
Well, it was not a very I don't even know what the right word is, but it wasn't a very illustrious way of getting started. I got started because I got my butt kicked out of a company. I got laid off. So I'd been in the business.
Necessity is the mother of all invention or
something like that. But I'd been in the real estate business, commercial real estate business for 20 years at that point. And the company I was working for was a great company. I loved it. I would have never left it. But it was a family-owned company. And that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that sometimes that means things can go a little sideways in a different way. And this particular family couldn't agree on a few things, and ultimately, they ended up deciding to shut down the company instead of continuing it, which was really sad because we had probably 150 employees. We had offices all throughout the whole country.
Wow.
It was 105 years old. So, I mean, it's just shocking that it came to that, right?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it did. And so in 2004, I got my papers to walk out the door.
Tell them what you were doing, because I think it's important to what you do now.
Okay. Well, I worked for a large owner of office buildings. So we had 80 office buildings around the country, and I was what's called an asset manager. Mm-hmm. So I was responsible for about a quarter of the company, of the assets of the company, the office buildings. Mm-hmm. And so I was the guy that directed the property management, the leasing, the capital improvement projects, anything that happened on those properties. I was the guy that had responsibility for that. I'm the guy that signed the leases on behalf of the landlord, all that.
So when I'm negotiating with my my lease, you're the guy behind the guy pulling all the strings for all that
It's
stuff.
kind of like when you go buy a car and the salesman says, let me go check with my sales manager.
Yeah.
Well, I was that guy, but only for real estate leases in an office building.
You're that guy.
I was that guy. Pretty sickening.
I always thought that guy was just a vending machine.
I know. They're sitting around having a cigarette and coffee. But anyway, so when that gig went away, I looked around for the next thing, and I'd always wondered about being on the tenant side, and that was very appealing to me. So I decided to start my own company and be a tenant-focused or a user-focused, maybe the better way to say it, company. So I exclusively represent the users, the companies and the nonprofits that need to lease or buy office buildings or warehouses.
So you Benedict Arnold.
I Benedict Arnold the deal. But I decided, you know what, hey, after 20 years of experience as a landlord, I've been a property manager, a leasing agent, a construction manager, an asset manager. Who better to represent a user
right
than the guy that had been on that side for so long, right? So I use that 20 years of experience now for the benefit of the user, the tenant, the company, and it's usually a company, and most of the time they lease. Not always, but most of the time.
Okay. So you get laid off, you start this company. How did all that go?
Well, I mean, honestly, for the first few months after I got laid off, I knocked around looking for the next landlord job, right? Because that just was the mindset.
Sure.
You do what you've done before.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for a few months, found a few opportunities, but I wasn't real excited about them. And so then I decided to do my own thing, right? So I called up a friend of mine, a guy named Roger Shake. He has Legacy Consulting Group, and again, he's been a guest on the show just recently. So listeners can go find that one on nextlevelshow.com. And so I went to Roger and said, hey, can we have dinner? And I'd like to pick your brain, because he had started his company about 8 years before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to dinner, and the whole families got together because our wives were friends. And I just said, hey, what's it like? Tell me how you did it and what you did and this and that. And anyway, so it was a good time. About 3 weeks later, he calls me up and he says, all right, Bob, I've talked to my partner, and we want to be your first client.
Wow.
And it was all of a sudden like, oh, man, that means this is real now. I've put it out there, and now he's telling me he's ready to engage me.
How cool is that, though?
Oh, it was awesome. And he's still a client.
Yeah.
And, it's been, 13, 14 years. And, awesome guy, awesome company. His partner, Steve Walks, is fantastic.
Yeah.
But, I really had to step up then. But the cool thing is that deal led to another deal, which led to another deal. Yep. And then I got out there and I started, beating the pavements and telling people what I was doing. And
then you started with me when I first moved out of the guest room home, our like massive, 300 square foot office that we put 40 people into.
Got to start somewhere, right? But yeah, so anyway, so that's what we do.
So who's your ideal client right now?
An ideal client is a company that already leases space in an office building.
Okay.
Because their lease is going to expire at some point in the future. They may need to expand in the meantime. They may need to sublease and move somewhere else to get the space they need, whatever. But it's a company that already leases space in an office building. That is the number one. And so these are the tall buildings you see along LBJ Freeway and downtown. Size? And, size of tenant could be anywhere from 15 or 20 employees up to hundreds of employees, multiple locations. We're a small boutique company. There's only 3 of us in the company, but we've done business, all over Texas, elsewhere in the country. I'm a part of a national association of purely tenant rep firms like mine, where we don't take listings from landlords. We won't work on that side because it creates conflicts of interest. So, I can help people wherever they need to go.
And full disclosure, I'm a client, so some of these questions are leading. But let's talk about the lease track. I think that's worthwhile. It's one of the ways that I think Bob and his company Riata deliver additional value that I knowing a lot of other business owners that they're not receiving from their tenant reps.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we did a show recently called Branded Processes. So, again, if you go to our website for the show, nextlevelshow.com, you can look that up. And in fact, Stephen also has a branded process for his company that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But, yeah, the Riata lease track system is really a system that applies the 20 years of landlord experience to the clients so that once a lease is signed, we don't just collect our commission, walk away, and say, we'll see you in 5 years when there's another opportunity to get paid again, right?
Right.
So we manage the leases for our clients throughout their lease term. So what does that mean in practicality?
Mm-hmm.
Well, every 3 months, every quarter, we'll send a email to the client saying, hey, this is what's going on in your lease for the next quarter.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things you need to know about. Maybe there's a bump in rent. Maybe there's an option that needs to be exercised. Maybe this is just the time of the year that the landlord reconciles the operating expenses from the previous year, and send us that bill when you get it,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll review it and make sure it looks accurate before you have to pay it.
Yeah. You've uncovered money that we were about to get charged that we didn't need to be paying.
And I will say most landlords do it accurately and correctly.
Yeah.
So that's the good news.
Yeah, and ours fixed it right away.
Yeah, and
It was
most landlords are
oversight.
great, but every now and then you get somebody who makes a mistake.
Sure.
And you know what? We've had a few instances where somebody who tried to bill a client $13,000. We were able to bring that down to $4,000. Somebody else that was trying to be billed $4,500, we got that taken away altogether just because we found mistakes that were made,
Right.
not because somebody was intentionally trying to, overcharge.
But I think the key is, for me anyway, just because I'm busy trying to grow our business, my business is not your business, is that the proactivity, right? So you guys are looking at proactively. It's not me saying, hey, can you look at it or what's coming on? And so anyway, I think that's kind of, to me, the key to that process.
Well, and I like doing the process because, I love nothing more than when a client calls up and just says, hey, I need whatever, or hey, this document showed up I don't understand. Like, for example, if a building sells or is going to be refinanced,
Sure.
something called an estoppel has to be created.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and so we'll review that before the client has to sign it. And so it's just another thing. So anything that touches real estate in any way, that's what we want to do on behalf of our clients, and we don't charge for that service. The Reality Lease Track system is free,
Mm-hmm.
and we will even provide that at times to people that we didn't do their lease, but wants to be a part of that. We will do that in certain cases. So if somebody wants to know if they're qualified, they can contact us. And our website, by the way, is texastenantrep.com.
Hey, so what's just to kind of keep it next level-ish, and again, this is just so you guys can get a background. We're not trying to sign in. I think it's important to know the background of Bob. So what's the most challenging thing in a business like yours?
Getting the client. I mean, the reality is that it's a relationship business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most people choose their tenant rep not based on who's the best tenant rep,
Mm-hmm.
Who has the best experience that can be applied to them. They do it based on who's their buddy,
Mm.
who was in their fraternity, who they go to church with, who's their brother-in-law.
And why does that matter?
It shouldn't, but
Okay.
it does. It's just like insurance. I mean, you're in the insurance business. Some people just use their
Sure, but I mean, like, so like, what makes that tough for you to overcome?
Oh, well, because it's hard to break the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they might be convinced that making a change
you'll
would
deliver
be
more value.
ideal, but are they really willing to, fire a buddy, a
Yeah,
friend,
yeah.
a family member? Often not.
Yeah.
So
I'd fire you in a heartbeat. So I'm just kidding.
You can just find someone else. Yeah, I mean, so that's the biggest thing is just, it's not convincing people they should use somebody like me. It's
Right.
convincing them to use me versus someone else. So that's the biggest challenge, and unfortunately, that's always going to be the challenge. And you know what? That's fine. We get enough. We get our fair share. We're happy. So we're not greedy. We don't have to get every one of them.
Sure.
But if we can get everyone above 200,000 feet, that'd be great. All right, but we're going to take another break here on 1190, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Stick around.
Hi, I'm Suresh.
And I'm Shri. We were Charged by Gurus. Thankfully, I didn't have to pay for this interview with Bob and Steven on the Next Level show. Otherwise, I could be helping them reverse my own chargeback.
Welcome back to the Next Level, conversations that propel business. So we've been talking about here recently what our companies are about. So we just talked about mine. So, Steven, your company is called Alkali.
It is.
So, first of all,
Not alcohol, alkali.
what is Alkali?
Yeah. So I'm a science nerd, and I was going to be a dentist, 4.0 science nerd, and the periodic table of elements was a big deal in chemistry, and you may remember it.
Yep.
And on the far left-hand side of the periodic table, there were the alkali metals. And alkali metals have one free floating outer electron that they share with the other elements on that table. And when they do, they stabilize those other elements. So what we say is we have, and also when it happens, it forms the strongest bond in chemistry, which is an ionic bond. So we say we have strong bonds with our clients. By sharing our wisdom, we make their companies more stable and secure.
Okay, and I think we've alluded to the fact you're in the insurance business, but be more specific with us. What kind of insurance?
So we help companies buy and manage their insurance, and so we have a team, that does employee benefits. We have a team that handles all the commercial business insurance liability. You have a fleet of automobiles. We have a team that does that, and we do have a team because we serve, a lot of the business owners. That handles personal insurance as well. So we all break up. No one. I'm probably the most generalized person in the company just because I have to understand how all the business runs. But quite honestly, everyone on our team is a specialist in what they do.
So give us the rundown. How did you start this business? Get the idea?
Yeah. So I had a business before. And we basically brokered professional employers organizations, and that was, basically helping companies outsource their payroll and workers' comp and employee benefits. And anyway, after 9/11, that company had some challenges, had some partnership issues, and for a number of reasons, it ended up not being the place for me anymore. I went through a little funk, a little bit of a depression. Again, thought I wanted to be a dentist, explored all that. Ultimately landed back that, hey, I'm going to take a run at insurance. And so I could not injure my prior company because they were in a totally different space, but I could go and kind of start something of my own. So out of the guest bedroom of my home, I bought a list of businesses here in Dallas and started cold calling. I'd make 200 phone calls a day. And I had a little point system. I'd just call.
How big was this list? How many names on it?
Oh, I bought a list of all of the businesses that had more than 10 employees in Dallas, and I just started calling them. And I would beg people to have meetings with me. And after a while, I found a few people that gave me a shot, and I won their business. And I worked really, really hard for them. Kind of almost like you. And a lot of those companies are still with us now. And they started spreading our word and moving our message. So little by little, brick by brick, we continued to build and grow our company.
Interesting. So now you said you started in the spare bedroom of your house.
Yes.
And so what did you do when you needed to hire your first employee? Did you bring that person into your house or what?
Well, that was a kind of a pivotal point for us. Because it was like, okay, well, I couldn't do that. My wife was a school teacher. She was supporting us at the time, and we were both working odd jobs on the weekends doing data entry and stuff because we were trying to pay off debt at the same time. So starting a company, my wife's supporting me. We're living on love. We were flat out broke, but it was something we were going after. And so I couldn't afford to move out of the home at the same time as and hire someone, and all the applicants were young females at the time. It just seemed to be who we were attracting at the pay we could afford. And so my wife, Corey, left teaching temporarily, air quotes, and she's successfully done every job in our company long enough to train someone else to do since. And so we built and grown. She was our first team member.
Wow. So how long did it take before you had the next one?
It wasn't too long after that. We started building momentum, and actually that team member's still with us too. Shelly joined us after that, and we moved out of the house at that point, which was perfect timing because we need the room because we're having our first child. And so allowed my wife to go on maternity leave, and Shelly, she was baptized in. In fact, someone just today called her the OG. She's the original gangster of Alkali. She's been around so long.
I thought you were going to say she suddenly turned into a midwife.
No, but she was a godsend, and like I said, we've grown up together, building a company, the three of us, and as we've grown and been blessed, one client at a time, things have. But the team has grown as well.
So insurance is such a commodity, it seems, or people think it is anyway.
Oh, it is.
So how do you differentiate yourself, your company,
Sure.
the services you provide?
So we have a unique process that's been trademarked called the Empowered Advantage, and it was actually created in partnership with our clients. So I literally went to our clients a few years into the business. We're having some success at this point. We were able to hire a couple people, but I was in a coaching program. And they're like, hey, you need processes to build and scale your company. And I was like, okay. I was a new believer at the time. I had just become a Christ follower, a little bit before starting the company. And I was like, I want to treat people the way I want to be treated, so maybe I should ask my clients what they want. And they gave me a whole lot of data. And I'm a science nerd, so I looked at it as a problem to solve. And how do we I couldn't eliminate everything because some of the problems were with the insurance companies. But I minimized, I eliminated what I could and minimized everything else. And then we went back to those clients. Like I said, they helped us name it, the Empowered Advantage. And we've trademarked it. And so that's really how we go about solving the problems of our clients, because the insurance is a commodity. There are differences in coverages and all that stuff, but it is largely a commoditized type product. So we look at how do we really solve problems for our clients, and that's really why we get hired. That's why we deliver the value, and that's why we continue to grow year over year. Once we know what the target is, we'll find you the most affordable way to get that done. Sometimes it's even self-insuring. We'll help you figure those things out. But it's getting to that and solving all the problems that go around with buying the insurance and the ongoing management of it.
So you're not out there selling insurance. You're providing solutions to some need.
Almost in every instant, for the most part, we're hired before we ever run a quote. And I mean, but we show all of our work. They know. I mean, they get full transparency with us, so they don't have to wonder whether or not there's something better out there because we show them.
So whenever a company is out there and their policies coming up for renewal, whether it's the liability, the professional liability, the fleet of cars that they're insuring, or the building that they own, or it's the employee benefits, when that's coming up, my experience has been that most insurance agencies just they do all the hard work up front in the first year to get the client, and then they just sort of let it ride. Yeah. And they just, the best thing that could happen for them is that it just renews, right, with the same company. But is that really in the best interest of the company, the client? No, it's not. I mean, but that's the way the industry's built. So the threshold to get into being in insurance, the licensing is not very challenging to be. There's lots of really great professionals in our industry that do a fantastic job. But it's the 80-20 rule. People always talk about, probably the 90-10 rule. There's probably 10% agents out there that are really, really proactive, take great care of their clients, and I love them. They do a good job, and if you're out there and you're listening, come join us. But there's a lot of others that do that, and it's because the way it's set up. They're trained to just go sell, and so they're selling products. And they got to sell, and they got to sell so much to replace, because they're never going to lose. Some businesses aren't going to make it, whatever. So they got to always outsell whatever they know that they might lose. And so we just took a different approach. We said, hey, we're going to focus on delivering value, and we're process-driven to really an annoying point, but I mean, what it does is it consistently delivers value, because what I don't want, relationship thing, like you mentioned, happens in our business, but I never want my client that's been with me 12 years and we have become very good friends to go and double check us and be like, what the heck is going on? Because usually I find the closer the relationship, the worse the client's being treated. And so I never wanted that to happen. I really, without a doubt.
And that's why we have a process. And so we literally measure, we have a system, we check it off, we make sure year over year that the client's getting delivered value.
I think that's huge. You talk about the relationship creates actually the opposite effect of what you would think. Mm-hmm. I know in my business, whenever I hear a tenant tell me, I have such a great relationship with my landlord, I don't want to interject a tenant rep into that and mess up that relationship. I'm like, grab your wallet, friend. Yeah. I've never, ever seen a situation where that's actually turned out to be in the best interest of the tenant, or in your case, the insured company.
I've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars from the friend from church or whatever. And they're not necessarily bad people. Again, it's just the way the business is set up, and they operate a certain way. And that's why our industry trains them to go sell, right? Instead of how do we deliver value? How do we get the systems and process and the team around it so that you can still go sell if that's your great set of gifts, but you get the team to make sure to continuously deliver that value year over year so that the client still it's not a one and done.
Yeah. Now, so who is your ideal client?
I mean, it varies, right? But I mean, our typical client has 20 or more employees, $2 million or more probably in revenue. And they care about people. We do a lot in employee benefits, so I mean we serve a lot of nonprofits and everything else. So we want growth-minded people because we're growth-minded, we're entrepreneurial, we're looking for creative ways to do it faster, easier, and cheaper, better for our clients. So we want clients to have that kind of mindset because they're really going to value what we can deliver. And then those type of people, those types of individuals are more likely to move our message, which keeps us from having to go sell all the time because our clients are doing the selling for us.
That's awesome. All right, so enough about us. So for our listeners, we've introduced you to the show, told you what it's about, given you some idea of what it is we talk to our guests about. We've introduced you to each of us. So we're hoping you'll be with us Mondays at 3 o'clock here on 1190 a.m. We think it's going to be a fun ride. Please go to our website, nextlevelshow.com, to see everything we've done in the past. You can
find us on Facebook, The Next Level Show, Twitter, @Conversations that Propel Business.
And we also are on podcasts. So you can go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartMedia, of course, and lots of other places and find us, search The Next Level Show. Got to have the word "the" in there.
And there's 2 years, so I promise you there's better stuff than even today, but we did want to get you introduced at least to us and what the show's about, and just expect many, many great things to come. We're glad to be here.
And our first show next week is with Chris English Insurance Group. Please tune in next week. We'll look forward to hearing from him.
Have a great week.